Ladies and gentlemen, this is a talk for everybody who cares, who truly cares about the people that produce the products that you and I consume, wear, and use. It's for all investors, companies, governments, and consumers who want to understand how they can use their buying power to have an impact on people and the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take you on a journey. Destination, the world, the future of sustainable supply chain management. Now you're probably going to think, wow, this is going to be the most boring talk of the day. Trust me, it's not, because it's also involving you. I'm a purpose-driven entrepreneur, and the last 25 years, I had the luxury to travel the globe and to visit and judge hundreds of factories and farms. I had the privilege to work on standards to judge the social circumstances under which our products are produced. And I can tell you, it's a very humbling experience. Standing there. I here have a picture. I will build my story today about this picture. But you know, it's different to see a picture as to be there and look them in the eye. And this is a very friendly picture. I could share much more confronting pictures with you. This is actually also the reason why I'm here. Because being there, seeing how lucky I am. Do you have any idea how you sit here, how lucky you are? That you are not there, but here, listening to me? And I decided to do something about it. And the only way to do that is to enable big companies that have a lot of buying power, to enable them to make a difference to them, to these girls, as an example for my talk today. And I understood that in order to do that, I needed to dive into the world of data and technology. It's not specifically my passion, but I found out there was only one way I could enable them to make a difference, and that is by giving them the data they need. But you know what is a very important lesson that I would like to share with you, an insight, a very important insight. And it is in these 25 years, in all these talks with huge corporations, with suppliers, with farmers, the only reason why they do something, why they change something, why they deliver something, is the question, what's in it for me is answered. They only do something when the what's in it for me question is answered. And exactly, ladies and gentlemen, that given, this human nature, is what is so powerful, where I'm so deeply convinced that that will change lives of these girls. So let me become a little bit more concrete. This is a jar of sun-dried tomato that I bought in the supermarket for €1.29. I had other, more expensive possibilities, but I chose the cheapest one available in that store. There was no information on the outside of the jar, and I asked, and this is very important, the company where I bought it, no question. I didn't send a mail to ask how was it produced and under which circumstances. I just went for the cheapest option. So, let me tell you a little bit about this picture. I took it myself 11 years ago, somewhere in Turkey. And the first girl on the picture is 15 years, and the other one is 9. And they work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and have no access to education, nothing. This process of cutting the tomatoes in two and letting them dry in the sun is more or less the same in every country where they do this. It's in Italy, it's in Tunisia, it's everywhere the same. And it's groups of migrant workers that roam around in half-assing areas, could also be about hazelnuts. I mean, the same people do that work. And it's families with their children that need to do this work to make a living, to survive the winters. And the only way that they can do it is let their children work, because otherwise they don't have enough. So, back to this jar. What if we would have an option? What if we have the choice between one jar of sun-dried tomatoes with nothing but with the cheapest price, and one that had a QR code where I could scan and where I could really see what's going on, but it cost a little bit more? What would you do? Would you buy it? Well, at least then you have an option, you have a choice to see what you are buying. What about the clothes that you are wearing? What do you think? Were children involved? What do you think that the chances are that with these sun-dried tomatoes that there were children involved? Do you think? Most certainly yes. But the truth is, we cannot see that at the outside of the product. We just don't know. Fact is, and the International Labour Organization just recently published a study, that there are 152 million children at work with no access to education. 152. And another thing about your clothes, that the garment workers in Bangladesh earn just enough with working full-time adults to cover 30% of the costs to make a decent living. Only 30%. The only way they can survive is work longer hours and let their children work. There's a root cause to all of this. The fact that we have power to change that needs to be explained. Because you have that power. You're maybe not aware of it, but every purchase that you do, when there is a QR code and you scan it, all your buying behavior are constantly monitored and directly translated to the products that you see on the shelf and on the internet, directly. So you have no idea about that impact, and I want you to be aware of it. Our buying behavior has a lot to do with price. And if I would ask you if you would deliberately would like to use products, consume products, where there's abuse of people involved or where the environment is polluted, what would you say? No, it would not make you happy, right? The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, that every human being would say that. And the same goes for companies, by the way. So where professional purchasing is done, also for this sun-dried tomatoes, if you would ask a professional purchaser, would he love to abuse people? He will, of course, also say no. But the fact is, ladies and gentlemen, that we often choose on price. And for some of us, it is not something you want, but it's not, they don't have a luxury of choice. I was in the position, I felt how it was to have almost no money. It changes your mind. But for those consumers and professional buyers that really want to make a difference, that really want to do something positive, the problem is that we don't know which products are truly well produced and which ones are not. So, we don't put our money where our mouth is. That's the fact. We all know the whole story about the chickens. You know, the poor chickens and the kilo knallers, how it's called in Holland. It's the best sold product because data shows that when you ask a citizen on how he thinks about these poor animals, that it would say, no, it's horrible. But when they come and they turn into a consumer, they go for the lowest price. And of course, that drills down in the supply chain. There is, if a company cannot earn money they have to do something. So it drills down. How? Well, commercial companies go and try to source cheaper. They try to find suppliers who can offer the products for a more cheaper price. And that phenomenon, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that we want products cheap, and that companies who want to make a living need to source cheaper, is called the race to the bottom. And that's a serious, serious thing. Commercial companies are judged on their financial results. And we have to face that. It's the world that we live in, and I think it's not a bad thing. I mean, we are living in a market-driven economy. But I see how big this pressure is on companies to make good financial results. Yes, there are investors that say that they feel that sustainable buying is very important. Yes, there are codes of conduct. All very beautiful. But when it comes to putting the money where the mouth is, also for investors, the only thing that really counts, and the only thing where they judge a CEO on, is on very good results. And the moment financial results are under pressure, sustainability becomes secondary. So, this is a positive talk. But it is the truth when it comes to the race to the bottom. Who do you think pays the price? You or them? What do you think? They pay the price. And this is a positive talk, so I need your help. And study shows that there is a growing group of consumers who are really willing to pay more. So how to get there? To allow us, for companies to allow us to have access to the story of the product, they need facts, right? Because otherwise it's not possible. How was the product produced? Under which circumstances? Did the farmer or the worker got paid a living wage or a fair wage? The problem, ladies and gentlemen, those companies do not have the data. They do not have the facts to allow us to make an informed decision. And I need to defend them a little bit because I am in this world of collecting and verifying data. It is very complicated to get this data. Let me give you some insights of this world that is behind your purchases that you do. Local laws and habits of countries all around the world are different. And in a lot of countries, there is just no data available. There is no real good structure, good infrastructure. Some commodities, like coca, have very complex supply chains. It's very hard to find the farmer who truly produced the coca beans. Even though you have a fair trade label, they also don't know who the farmer is. They know who the corporation is. The corporation gets the money. But the farmer, it's very hard because they can't find it. They can't find them. And there are lots of middlemen in the whole chain of a product. And they have no interest at all to share the data because they don't want customers to source directly. And that's a huge problem. What is also a problem for suppliers is that there are lots of customers with questions about sustainability, but they are different. So on working hours, one customer said this, other customer says that. It's confusing for a supplier. What do we need to do? And last but not least, also in their defense, there are the IT systems, we call it legacy systems. In some parts of the world, they still use MS-DOS, and then you want actual data of a product. It is a challenge, but also a lack of trust between the customer and the supplier. If you want data, a very important part is based on trust. You have to give your data to somebody you trust. And when you speak when you look at who's speaking to a supplier, it's always a professional buyer that speaks to a supplier. And I can tell you from experience, almost no one is trained on how to ask questions, ask for facts on sustainability. They're not trained on it, they have no idea. And last but not least, they get a bonus. Their incentive is based on buying cheap, not on buying sustainable. So the question, what's in it for him or her, is very easily answered when you are not incentivized on buying sustainable, but only on price. Why should you change something? It's let's say, a very common reaction of not getting the data. In contracts, there's often nothing about asking supply that they have to deliver the data with the product. So, ladies and gentlemen, back to this picture, just to see that we have a possibility to change. When I asked the director of the corporation, I went to dinner with him in the evening, if he would be willing to pay more to the workers, to give education to the children, to deliver the facts to prove it, if he would just got paid more by the customer, got a long-term contract, he didn't have to think twice. He looked at me and he said, of course I'm willing to do that. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a very important lesson. I have thousands of these examples. It is possible to make a change if the what's in it for me question is answered for the supplier. Even suppliers with different laws, habits, they are willing to make a change. And who benefits of them? Them, the workers. Because maybe they don't feel it, but they will do it if they get a better price. And this is so powerful. It improves the life of workers. Will it increase the price for us as consumers for some products when we will have the data? Yes, most probably. For sure in the beginning, the prices will be a little bit more up. But then it's up to you, as you all sitting here, to put your money where your mouth is and reward with your buying decision the companies who make an effort to give you access to the data. I'm deeply convinced that this can be done, and I will dedicate the rest of my working life to make that possible. And we are closer than you think. I can see investors that really try to understand that they need data from supply chains and that they need to reward companies who did an effort. I can see that there are heroes coming up, brave CEOs, who really stand up against their shareholders and say, price is important, but I want to give you the data to show how we improved life of workers. There are only a few, but I am sure that there will be more and more brave CEOs who are willing to take that responsibility. I see governments, and there will also be a law in Holland on child labor, that start to create a level playing field, asking all companies to deliver data on their products. If was child labor involved, yes or no? Of course, they also need the data. And they need to learn how to interpret that data, because otherwise it will be only a piece of paper. But it's closer than you think. We are there. And what I also would like to share with you, it's an insight, that there is an initiative going on where both leading retailers and producers in the world start working together to have one voice to all the suppliers in the world on what they mean with social work intensive. They start to harmonize. It's so strong, and they represent billions of buying power. I'm so happy to see these developments. And last but not least, we will have the technology. You had this wonderful speech about artificial intelligence and technology. I worked with blockchain very successful project for some of our customers. And 100% sure it will look different in 10 years. It will not be the same as it is now. But I'm convinced, and you will remember maybe my talk in a couple of years, that the distributed ledger and the smart contracts, a little bit technical, will allow us as consumer to scan a QR code and see how the product was produced and under which circumstances. Have one truth for the whole chain that was involved by delivering you the product that you want to buy. Ladies and gentlemen, with our purchase, we are connected to the people on the far end of the supply chain. We are connected to these girls who work under circumstances that you and I cannot even imagine. When trusted data becomes available for us, it's up to us to put our money where our mouth is and positively influence their lives on a daily business just by changing the way you buy. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.